I blinked, and it didn't. My reflection stayed there, frozen mid-motion, while I jolted upright, heart hammering against my ribs like it wanted to escape. For a split second, I thought I'd gone insane, that maybe I'd sleepwalked through some fragmented nightmare. But the reflection, it was deliberate. It stared back at me with a precision that no ordinary mirror should possess, as if it were waiting, calculating, mocking me. I'd woken up like any other morning. Sunlight spilled weakly through the blinds, dust motes drifting lazily in the air. My bathroom was silent, familiar, the smell of soap and toothpaste a mundane comfort. And then I raised my hand to scratch my cheek, and nothing happened in the reflection. Instead, it lifted its own hand first, slow, deliberate, almost savoring the delay. Panic clawed at my throat. I stumbled backward, eyes locked on that impossible mimic. Every rational thought fled. Mirrors are supposed to mirror. They're supposed to obey the laws of physics, of perception, of reality. Not this, not whatever this thing was. My reflection smiled. Not a friendly, everyday smile, but the kind that reaches too far into your chest, digs into every hidden fear. It knew something I didn't, or maybe it was showing me something I was never meant to know. I couldn't look away. My reflection began pacing, one step, then another, while I froze in place. Each movement was exact, careful, but deliberately out of sync. It wasn't just copying me anymore, it was leading, instructing, challenging. And when it turned its head slowly, eyes glinting in a way my own never did, I realized it had been waiting for me to notice. Waiting for me to blink and see it wasn't me anymore. A sense of dread settled in my chest. There are things you're meant to see only in stories. Whispered rumors late at night when your house creaks and shadows twist just wrong. This wasn't a story. This was reality bending in the bathroom of my tiny apartment, and I, helpless, naive, entirely human, was standing right in front of it. Something inside me screamed to step back, to close my eyes and pretend I hadn't seen. But curiosity is a far stronger force than fear, and before I could resist, I took a hesitant step forward. The reflection mirrored that, but with a slight delay, tilting its head in a questioning gesture as if it were amused by my caution. And then it did something I still can't shake. It raised its hand to its mouth, pressed two fingers lightly against its lips, and whispered, though no sound reached me in almost human shh. My stomach turned. I wanted to scream, but my voice was gone, trapped somewhere between the rising panic and disbelief. That's when I realized the worst part. It wasn't just a reflection. It was aware. It was patient. And it knew I'd never unsee what I had just witnessed. There was knowledge embedded in that motion. Secrets I wasn't meant to uncover. And already, I felt the subtle, insidious pull of knowing too much. I ran. Or at least, I thought I did. But the mirror always waits. And now, every time I pass a reflective surface, I feel that same gaze, that patient, impossible awareness. I can't explain why it happens or what it wants, but one thing is certain. Once you see your reflection move before you do, you can't ever unsee it. Most mornings, I wake to the shrill beep of my alarm at exactly 6:47 a.m., a number I've memorized because my brain apparently enjoys small, cruel rituals. I drag myself out of bed, barefoot on the cold wooden floor, and shuffle to the kitchen, where a half-empty mug of coffee waits stale from the night before, but comforting in its familiarity. My apartment is small, cluttered, the kind of place where your furniture seems to develop personality just from sheer proximity. The bookshelf leans slightly to the left, the fridge hums like it has opinions, and my cat, a scraggly tabby named Elliot, acts like the landlord in disguise. I've always relied on routine. There's a strange comfort in predictability, the illusion that if you know the exact order of events, the world will stay at least partially sane. I shower at 6:55, brush my teeth at 7:10, scroll through the news, mostly bad, always depressing, and leave for work by 7:45. Nothing remarkable, ordinary, safe, and yet, even in these mundane rituals, there were oddities. The mirrors in my apartment were positioned at odd angles, remnants of some previous tenant's questionable design choices. One hung above the radiator, tilted slightly downward, reflecting not just the room but a portion of the hallway I rarely walked through. Sometimes when I passed it in the early morning haze, I swore I caught a flicker of movement, something in the corner of the glass that didn't belong to me. Shadows that darted faster than any cat, reflections of objects that weren't in the room. At first, I blamed exhaustion, then the coffee, then Elliot. I'm not a paranoid person. I like to think I'm cynical, more amused than fearful about life's absurdities. When my friend Mara called last week, I cracked, I think my mirror's plotting against me. It's got better posture than I do. She laughed, a short, skeptical chuckle. You've been binge-watching too many horror stories again. Maybe just sleep more. Her voice was grounding, normal, the kind of human connection that reminds you some things haven't completely fallen apart. Even so, something niggled at the back of my mind. Small details, the way light hit a corner, the whisper of movement behind me in reflective surfaces, made my chest tighten for no rational reason. I could shrug it off during the day. At night, in the solitude of my apartment, those moments stretched into something more insistent, a low hum of wrongness I couldn't ignore. I have quirks that might have fueled my overactive imagination. I check locks 3 times, count the tiles on the bathroom floor when I'm thinking too hard, and talk to Elliot as if he could offer genuine advice. My life is ordinary, and yet every detail seemed to teeter on the edge of subtle unease. The apartment felt familiar, yet strange. Like a friend who sometimes spoke in riddles. It was during one of those late mornings, just after brushing my teeth, when I first noticed it clearly, the small discrepancies in my reflection. I reached for the towel, and my reflection slightly delayed, slightly too precise, mimicked me a fraction too late. My heart skipped a beat, and I laughed nervously, muttering, "Okay, that's new." But the unease lingered, curling in my stomach like smoke. Something was changing. Something was waiting. And whatever it was, it had begun to notice me as much as I noticed it. I remember the exact moment it started, though I wish I didn't. I was brushing my teeth, standing in front of the bathroom mirror, toothpaste foam clinging stubbornly to my lips when I noticed it. My reflection paused. Just a fraction of a second, enough to make my stomach lurch. I froze mid-swallow, toothbrush trembling in my hand. Watching it blink out of sync, a heartbeat behind me, the room felt colder all of a sudden. The air thick and heavy, as though the world had decided to lean in and watch. Shadows stretched unnaturally across the tiles, bending at angles that made no sense. The fluorescent light overhead flickered once, then steadied, but the unease remained. I could hear the faint hum of the radiator, louder than usual, or maybe my own heartbeat echoing through the pipes. Every nerve screamed, but my eyes refused to leave the glass. I must be imagining it, I muttered under my breath, a pitiful attempt at reassurance. This is fine. I'm fine. It's just sleep deprivation, maybe stress. Coffee too strong. But the reflection didn't respond. Instead, it did something I couldn't rationalize. Slowly, deliberately, it raised its hand before I did. A mocking, precise motion, smooth and deliberate, as though it had been rehearsing for years. I stumbled back, nearly dropping the toothbrush. My reflection tilted its head, staring at me with eyes that felt sharper than my own. The foam on my lips gleamed under the flickering light, and I swear it lingered longer on the reflection than on me. It smiled, a small, knowing smile, like it held the answer to some question I had never dared to ask. I know you've read stories like this before, the ones posted late at night, whispered about in dark corners online, the ones that make you sleep with a lamp on. I don't care. It felt real, the kind of real that leaves your mind spinning, questioning every law you thought unbreakable. I couldn't shake the sensation that this wasn't just a visual trick, that the mirror had knowledge about me, about things no one else could possibly know. I tried talking to it. What do you want? My voice cracked, a high, brittle sound bouncing off the walls. Silence, save for the gentle hum of the bathroom. And then, the reflection's lips moved slowly, carefully forming a word I couldn't hear, a whisper trapped behind glass. I backed away, breath coming in ragged gasps, mind racing to rational explanations. A delayed neurological reaction? A trick of light? My reflection had to be me. It had to be, but deep down I knew. I felt it in my bones. It wasn't me. It had awareness. It had patience. It knew. It knew things about me I hadn't told anyone, secrets buried in corners of my memory I'd never even spoken aloud. Fear crawled over my skin, prickling, as if invisible hands were dragging themselves along my spine. I wanted to turn away, to pretend it wasn't happening, but my feet wouldn't obey. Minutes, or was it hours, passed in silence, a tense standoff between two versions of myself. The reflection mimicked my movements, but with subtle deviations, small gestures that shouldn't exist, micro-expressions I couldn't control. It leaned in just a little too close, watched me with an intensity that made me question every choice, every memory. I wondered briefly if this was punishment, some cosmic joke meant to expose every hidden fault I'd carefully masked. Finally, shaking, I tore my gaze away and stumbled into the living room. I tried rationalizing. Maybe it was exhaustion, maybe hallucinations, but the rational voice in my head was weak, whimpering against the gnawing certainty in my gut. And then I saw it again. A fleeting glimmer in the sliding glass door leading to the balcony. The reflection moved there too, in perfect, horrifying synchronization. Except it was still behind the bathroom mirror. I realized then it wasn't confined to one surface. It was everywhere, watching, learning, waiting. I couldn't trust a single reflective surface, couldn't trust my own eyes. And worse, I began to understand that whatever it was patient. It had time. It had control. And it already knew I was noticing. It didn't take long for me to notice a pattern. The reflection wasn't random. Every morning, every time I brushed my teeth, poured coffee, or even glanced at a window pane, it moved slightly ahead of me, an anticipatory shadow. I started timing my actions, testing it, lifting my hand slowly, turning my head deliberately. And without fail, it anticipated, it led. It performed with an eerie precision that no human or mirror should possess. At first, I tried rational explanations. "It's just muscle memory," I muttered, pacing the apartment late one night. "I move the way I always move. My brain predicts it." But logic faltered under the weight of what I was seeing. It wasn't mere mimicry, it was calculation, anticipation. The reflection adjusted subtly, correcting itself as though it were learning, adapting. I could see it in the slight twitch of its fingers, the tilt of its head, the almost imperceptible pause before I reached for a cup. I began keeping a journal, noting every discrepancy, every deviation. Coffee poured a fraction of a second too soon. Toothpaste flicked at a slightly wrong angle, eyes meeting mine before I even registered my own expression. Sometimes it moved when I wasn't even in front of a mirror. The sliding glass door, the reflective screen of my laptop, the shiny surface of the toaster, they all became stages for its mimicry. My apartment, once ordinary and comforting, transformed into a labyrinth of eyes. I tried telling Mara about it. "I swear," I said over the phone, voice low, trembling, "it's like the reflections. They know me. They know what I'm about to do. And it's not just one mirror. It's everywhere." There was a pause. "You need to sleep," she said finally, lightly, the tone that implies concern but also disbelief. "You sound exhausted. Or paranoid. Maybe both." I hung up, my chest tight, and stared at the bathroom mirror. It stared back, calm, patient, deliberate. It knew I was watching. It knew I was doubting myself. And I began to understand something terrifying. It wasn't just reflecting reality. It was recording, remembering, maybe even anticipating events before they happened. Something about its awareness was wrong, unnatural, and it wasn't confined to a single plane of existence. The terror escalated. Routine became unbearable. Coffee spilled itself too fast. Faucets turned off slightly too late. Shadows shifted in ways that didn't match the angle of the light. I felt watched, studied, as though each movement I made was catalogued and stored somewhere I couldn't see. My apartment no longer felt like a home. It was a testing ground. One evening, exhausted and jittery, I looked into the hallway mirror and froze. The reflection raised a hand and pointed directly at me. Not just a gesture, but a deliberate communication. Precise, accusatory. My heart lurched, a cold dread washing over me, and a single thought clawed at my mind. It wasn't just aware. It was trying to tell me something. Something I wasn't ready to understand. I started avoiding mirrors. Not just the obvious ones in the bathroom or bedroom, but every reflective surface in my apartment. The sliding glass door, the polished toaster, the tiny metal plate on the door handle, they all felt like eyes watching, judging, anticipating. The apartment I once found cozy now pressed in around me, shadows stretching longer, angles sharper, sounds warped. The hum of the radiator became a low, insistent growl. Every creak of the floorboard made me flinch, half expecting the reflection to appear somewhere it shouldn't. Sleep became impossible. I would lie in bed, staring at the ceiling, hearing whispers in the glass, subtle shifts in the reflection that weren't there moments before. Sometimes I thought I heard my own voice, calling from the kitchen, faint and distorted, though I knew I hadn't spoken. The world had started to feel unreal. as if the apartment had been rewritten while I wasn't looking. I almost didn't record this, but you need to see it. That thought repeated itself in my head, a mantra of desperation. Every time I lifted my phone or notebook to document the anomalies, the reflection seemed to notice. It paused, tilted its head in mock contemplation, and I felt its awareness pressing through the glass like a living thing. I wasn't imagining it. I wasn't hallucinating. And yet, no one would believe me. Friends, family, they'd call me paranoid, or exhausted, or simply crazy. Even my cat, Elliot, had started acting differently. He hissed at mirrors, stalked the shadows with fur on end, and avoided corners of the apartment where the light caught just right. The small signs that had once been amusing quirks now felt like warnings. One night, in a fit of panic, I wandered from room to room, turning off lights, avoiding every reflective surface. But the reflection didn't vanish. It moved independently, gliding from surface to surface, always watching, always ahead. And then I realized something worse. It wasn't just mimicking. It was learning, adapting, almost thinking. And if it ever fully detached, if it ever broke free from the confines of glass, there would be nothing left to protect me. That's when I noticed it doing something no one else should know. It mimicked not my movements, but my thoughts. I reached for my phone with a trembling hand, thinking to text Mara, but the reflection raised a finger as if to warn me. And then it tapped against the glass, in perfect sync with my pulse, as though reading the rhythm of my heartbeat itself. My chest tightened. The reflection knew me in ways no one could, and I was powerless to stop it. Safe spaces didn't exist anymore. My apartment, my home, the one place I should have felt secure, had become a prison of mirrors. Each surface was a portal to awareness, a witness to every twitch, every breath, every fear. And the reflection, it was patient, waiting, smiling in ways I couldn't yet fully comprehend. It happened suddenly, without warning. One moment I was pacing the living room, heart hammering, trying to convince myself I was imagining it. The next, the reflection no longer mimicked, it opposed me. My hand reached for the light switch, and it pulled away, sliding across the glass with a grin that curdled my stomach. I froze, every rational thought shredded into panic, my mind looping over and over, trying to reconcile what I was seeing. You. What are you? I whispered, voice barely audible, my own fear making it sound like a scream. The reflection tilted its head, eyes gleaming with intent, and formed words I couldn't hear. The movements were precise, deliberate, a silent message carried in motion alone. I knew it understood me, knew me, and the realization made my chest tighten so violently I thought I might collapse. Ordinary objects became instruments of terror. The coffee mug I set on the counter slid a few inches against its own will. The toaster popped open with a sharp metallic clang, though it wasn't plugged in. Shadows bent and curled unnaturally around the furniture, stretching toward me with impossible angles. My home, the one place that should have been safe, had become a gallery of the uncanny. Every surface, every reflective shard, every polished edge was a stage for the reflection's growing dominion. I tried to confront it directly. Stop, you're not real. My words trembled, laced with hysteria. It lifted a finger to its lips, perfectly still, as if reminding me that my voice was irrelevant. And then it pointed not at me, but beyond me, toward the kitchen, toward the cupboard where I kept letters, photographs, memories I'd never shared with anyone. It knew everything. Panic overtook me. My thoughts fragmented into disjointed loops. What does it want? Why me? Could I escape? Could I fight? I lunged toward the hallway mirror, desperate to confront it face to face, but it wasn't there. Not yet. And then, a flicker, a heartbeat, a breath, a moment, and it appeared in the far living room window, perfectly aligned with my movements, perfectly out of sync, perfectly wrong. I staggered back, tripping over the rug, ears ringing, eyes darting, mind teetering on the edge of comprehension. I don't understand. What do you want from me? The reflection's hand reached out, touching its own glass surface in a mimic of my motion. I realized with a suffocating dread that it wasn't just reflecting reality, it was teaching, probing, testing. Its awareness extended beyond the confines of the mirror, insinuating itself into every corner of perception, every hidden thought dot, and then it did something I'll never forget. For a moment, just a heartbeat, it aligned perfectly with me. Every gesture mirrored mine, every breath matched mine, every blink sensed. It was terrifying and intimate, a perfect symmetry that felt like drowning in recognition. Then, in a blink, it vanished, gone. The mirrors were empty. My apartment was silent. My pulse thundered in my ears, but I knew it hadn't truly left. I felt it, watching, waiting, lurking just beyond perception. There was knowledge it held secrets I wasn't meant to uncover, and the reflection had shown me only a fraction. My chest tightened as realization struck. The confrontation hadn't ended. It had only begun. Days, or was it weeks? Passed in a blur of sleepless nights and jittery mornings. I couldn't trust my own eyes, my own mind. Every reflective surface became a source of dread. I felt guilt, irrational and heavy, for even noticing it, for engaging with it, for letting my curiosity drag me into this nightmare. The apartment had lost its warmth. It felt hollow, like a place I once inhabited, but could never return to fully. I replayed every moment, every small deviation, obsessively cataloging the reflection's behaviors. The fear was constant, gnawing like a living thing lodged in my chest. Every movement, every shadow, every flicker of light became a message, a warning, a riddle I was too terrified and perhaps too foolish to solve. I questioned my sanity. Was I imagining it all? Or had the reflection revealed something about the world, something darker than any normal reality could hold? And I realized I wasn't the first. Stories I dismissed as folklore, online posts buried in obscure forums, all pointed to the same pattern. Someone sees the reflection move before themselves. Someone notices the impossible. Someone disappears or changes. And I know, in the deepest part of my mind, I won't be the last. There's a cycle, a hidden order that the mirrors obey, and I am now entangled in it. I'm sharing this with you because maybe you'll notice it too. Maybe, if you pay attention, you'll see the subtle discrepancies, the anticipations, the knowledge lurking just beneath the glass. Maybe you'll uncover things that are best left unseen, or maybe, like me, you'll discover secrets that will haunt you forever. Comment, theorize, share your experiences. You need to stay alert. Mirrors aren't just reflective, they remember, they anticipate, they judge. Even now, as I write this, I can't shake the feeling of being observed. In the corner of my eye, every reflective surface seems to twitch, a subtle ripple across the glass, as though testing whether I'm watching. It hasn't left. It's patient, waiting, and I can't help but wonder if it's already reading these words, smiling at my futile attempt to warn you. I thought it was gone. Days passed without a flicker, without a twitch, and I dared to breathe again. I told myself the apartment was safe, that I had survived, that the reflection had vanished, or maybe I had finally learned not to notice. I tried to move on, tried to forget the cold precision of its anticipation, the impossible knowledge it carried, the way it had smiled at me with understanding I could never match. But then, I saw it. My reflection. In the kitchen window, faint in the half-light, tilting its head the way it always did, and smiling. Not a friendly smile, not a joke, not a mirror of my own expression, but something patient, knowing, deliberate. And in that moment, I understood. The cycle doesn't end. The mirrors are still watching, still waiting, still learning. If you've read other stories in this community, you might recognize the pattern. The first sighting, the subtle anticipations, the obsession, the confrontation. I'm not alone. Others have seen it. Others have felt it. And the unanswered questions remain, hanging like shadows just beyond the glass. What does it want? How far can it reach? And how many of us are already trapped without realizing it? I don't know the answers. I don't even know if answers exist. But I know this. Every reflective surface could hold it. Every glance could reveal it. And if you think you're safe, if you think your apartment, your home, your mirrors are ordinary, you might already be wrong. I thought it was gone. But then I saw my reflection. Smile. Smile.